Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. His mug hit the table so hard the coffee jumped. I'm Lee 30 and that sound still rattles inside me. He leaned back, eyes on his phone, jaw tight as stone. Then he dropped it flat and casual. I own this place, remember that? My laugh came out thin like I was clearing my throat. You own what? I pushed my plate away a little. He finally looked up slow, as if I had interrupted something important. The house, the bills, everything you use right now. That word everything sat there between us like a dare. I reached for my mug and missed the handle the first time. You mean our house? My voice tried to sound normal and failed. He scooped a piece of toast, took a huge bite and chewed forever. When you pay for it, you can call it whatever. I felt my face heat while his stayed completely calm. Our toddler banged a spoon against the tray and squealed. I turned to wipe his chin just to do something useful. Behind me, the chair scraped and my husband stood up. You used the card at that store again yesterday. The spoon slipped from my fingers and clattered loud on the floor. You checked the account this morning already. My back still faced him. Of course I checked, it is my paycheck. He moved closer, I could feel his shadow at my shoulder. You do not work now, so that money is mine. I hated how my hand shook while I picked up the spoon. I strapped our kid tighter in the chair so he would not twist. Groceries are for the family, I said, words slow and heavy. You can ask first next time, it is not complicated. He shrugged like we were discussing a movie choice. Like it was nothing to turn me into someone who needed permission. I turned back to the table and sat, though I wanted to walk away. My toes sat cold and untouched, my stomach already in knots. You promised we were a team, I said, quieter than I planned. He grabbed his keys, already halfway checked out of the scene. Teams have roles, I finance it, you live in it. That line hit harder than the mugs hitting the table earlier. I watched him walk to the door without looking back once. The lock clicked and the kitchen went weirdly silent, even with the baby. I stared at the spot where his plate had been a minute before. That was the first moment I actually wondered what I had given up. I was rinsing dishes when my phone buzzed on the counter. Family budget tonight, his text read, no question mark anywhere. My thumb hovered over the screen longer than made sense. I wiped my hands on a towel and stared at that line. I already knew this was not going to feel like a team talk. I typed sure and added a smiley I did not feel at all. Deleting it once, I replaced it with just sure and hit send. The answer came back fast like he had been waiting. Good, pull up our numbers before I get home. Our numbers, but I did not control a single one anymore. I dug my old laptop out from under a stack of kids' clothes. The battery whined when I turned it on, like it resented the effort. My browser still opened on a training site from my old career. I closed it so fast my fingers slipped on the trackpad. It felt like hiding something shameful, even though it was just work. His spreadsheet already sat in my inbox with a short note on top. Read this closely, we need to tighten things, that was the whole message. No hey, no softness, just that clipped instruction with a period. I clicked the file and watched rows of numbers load. Lines and columns marched across the screen like they had authority. The layout was brutal in its clarity, and he knew it. His income at the top, bold and centered like a title. Under that, lists of costs labeled with his name first every time. Under those, one small section titled Variable Household Spending. That was the only part marked with my name beside it. My chest got tight when I scrolled to that section slowly. Cleaning, diapers, gas, food, little words that somehow turned into accusations. Next to each one, a comment in the margin with a question. Why so high this month? Can this be reduced? Please justify change. I leaned back and rubbed my forehead, suddenly very aware I had no paycheck. The front door opened right as I closed the laptop with a snap. He dropped his keys in a small tray by the entrance. Long day, he muttered, already heading toward the kitchen like routine. I followed, heart clipped to the inside of my throat. Every footstep felt louder than it should have felt. Did you check the sheet? He grabbed a glass from the cupboard. Yeah, I went through it, my voice came out rough. He poured water and drank half before facing me fully. Good, then this will be quick. His shoulders were loose, mine were not. He gestured toward the table like we were about to sign a deal. We sat across from each other, my laptop between us like a referee. So he tapped the screen with one finger on my section. These areas are where we need discipline now that you are home. I hated that phrase, discipline, like I was an unruly teenager again. I folded my hands to keep them steady under the edge. What do you mean by discipline? I already knew though. He turned the laptop slightly, just enough to angle the numbers toward me. You are in charge of these costs, so you manage them smarter. We keep hearing how staying home saves on childcare and extras. Right now, it looks like you just swapped your job for errands. That line burned, even though part of me feared he was right. I opened my mouth, then closed it when my eyes watered. You wanted to be with our kid full time, remember? He used that word wanted like it was my solo fantasy. I nodded because arguing that point would have taken an hour. He shifted in his chair and cracked his knuckles once. Here is what makes sense, he slid a notepad toward me. A fixed amount each week for your list there, no more surprises. He wrote a number and circled it twice for emphasis. My stomach dropped because I already knew it would not stretch enough. That is not very much, I finally managed to say. It is more than fair since I cover the big stuff alone. His jaw tightened on that word alone, like it justified everything. I wanted to remind him that before this, we both carried weight. Instead, I traced the circle he had drawn until my finger trembled. He watched that movement and let out a short laugh with no humor. If you want more freedom, you can always find part-time work later. You were the one who insisted on being available every single day. There it was, the twist that turned my choice into a burden. I felt the guilt slam into me harder than any criticism. So what, I asked, voice low so it would not crack. He leaned back and laced his fingers behind his head, casual. So now I pay the major bills, you track the smaller stuff. He spoke like this was balanced, like each side weighed the same. You handle the house, I handle the income, that is the trade. I stared at that notepad again, at the tidy circle around the figure. That little ring felt like a fence I had not agreed to. I can try, I whispered, the words dry and thin. He nodded once, satisfied, like a manager closing a meeting. Good, then we understand our lanes now, his phrase carved into me. He stood up and kissed the top of my head in passing. That casual touch made my skin crawl instead of soothe me. This is better for us, trust me. He reached for his phone again. The glow of the screen lit his face more than I did. I watched him walk away and realized I had just accepted terms. Later that night, I opened the spreadsheet again in the dark. I clicked on my section and stared until the words blurred. I tried to imagine where I could cut, what I could hide. Every adjustment I pictured made our life feel smaller and colder. That was the moment I understood this arrangement could be used against me. The cashier flinched when the card beeped and froze the screen. I knew that sound, I had heard it once before. Try again, I forced a smile, my hand already damp. She swiped once more and the same harsh tone blasted. People shifted behind me, impatient, judging. I felt every movement. My kid fussed in the cart and kicked at the strap. Just a second, sorry, I muttered, my face burning hot. I dug into my bag for the small roll of bills. That was my new weekly stash, folded tight and ugly. I counted twice, hands clumsy, praying it would cover everything. It barely did, with $3 left over and nothing more. I shoved the receipt away without looking at the total. My phone buzzed before I reached the parking lot. Card decline alert, everything all right, his text flashed on the screen. My throat closed up like I had been caught stealing something. Reached limit, used cash, I typed, thumbs slow and careful. The answer came quick again, almost like he waited for this. That limit exists for a reason, keep to the plan. He added a thumbs up, which somehow made it worse. I strapped my kid into the seat and swallowed the anger down. That night he spread small stacks of cash on the table. He lined them up like he was doing a magic trick. This makes it simpler, he told me, voice oddly cheerful. 1 stack per week, you handle food and basics from this. He nudged them toward me like a prize I had earned. I stared at those bills, then at his satisfied expression. It feels like an allowance, slipped out before I could stop it. He snorted and shook his head like I was being dramatic. Call it whatever you want, the math stays the same. He pushed the nearest stack closer until it brushed my hand. I picked it up, the weight smaller than it looked before. What if there is something unexpected? I asked, already nervous. Then you text me first, I am not unreasonable, he replied. He stood, already reaching for the TV remote like this was done. Just remember I refill it, so do not treat it like a toy. The next week, diapers went on sale and I rushed to buy. I filled the cart with extra packs to cover the month. Halfway through adding formula, my chest tightened. I started counting. I pulled out my phone, opened the calculator, numbers spinning around. I left one pack behind, heart pounding, hoping I had not misjudged. Later at home, I emptied the crumpled notes onto the counter. Only a small amount remained, and it was barely midweek. I stared at the few bills like they were mocking me. Against my pride, I typed, "Need a bit more, sale on baby stuff." I hovered over send, then pressed it anyway, stomach twisting hard. He walked in that evening with an extra envelope between his fingers. "Already burned through this?" he asked, dropping it near the sink. His eyebrows lifted, not angry yet, just sharp and curious. I opened my mouth, words scrambling, then forced a steady tone. "There was a discount I stocked up, so we save later." He tore the envelope open and started counting the contents slowly. "This is not nothing," he murmured, placing each bill in a row. I could feel him building a case, even if he stayed calm. "Next time, send a picture of the total first, all right?" I nodded, cheeks hot, wondering when I had become this careful. A few days after that, his parents came by for a visit. His mom watched him hand me the weekly pile at the counter. "Oh, look at that, you get room and board and spending money." She laughed, bumping his shoulder like it was a cute arrangement. I swallowed my reply and tucked the cash away with shaky fingers. "She keeps this place running, trust me, it is not vacation." He wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me into his side. For a second it almost sounded like support, like partnership even. Then he added, "I cover the costs, she covers the chores." Everyone nodded like that sentence summed up a balanced life. Later, when she helped me pick up toys, she dropped her voice. "At least you do not have to worry about bills anymore." She smiled, meaning well, trying to be kind and reassuring. I forced a laugh that came out flat and oddly loud. If only she knew how much I worried about every single dollar. The following weekend, a friend texted, inviting me out for coffee. I stared at her message, then at the thin roll in my wallet. Between gas and groceries, there was not much room for anything extra. I walked into the living room and hovered near the couch. Would it mess things up if I grabbed a latte tomorrow? He muted the game and glanced over, one eyebrow slightly raised. "From your weekly cash, or are we talking bonus funds?" He dragged out those last words like a joke, but it stung. "I can skip it," I shrugged, trying to sound casual and fine. He paused, then shrugged back, "Go, I will cover it this time." At the cafe, he insisted on ordering for both of us. When we met my friend, he waved his card with a grin. "She does not pay for stuff now, I have her covered," he said. My friend laughed and called him generous, eyes wide with approval. I smiled along while something in my chest pulled tight and mean. After that, little comments started popping up during random moments. If I mentioned needing shampoo, he would joke about his endless sponsorship. When I grabbed takeout once, he raised an eyebrow at the receipt. "Just remember whose account keeps this rolling," he would add lightly. He always used that easy tone, but the words landed heavy. I caught myself one afternoon, hand on a cheap t-shirt in a store. I checked the price tag twice, doing quick math in my head. Without thinking, I whispered out loud, "Can I actually get this?" No one else heard, but my own voice startled me badly. That was when I realized I had started asking permission even alone. The smoke alarm chirped once and he yanked the oven open. "Seriously, you had one job tonight," he waved at the roasting pan. Our friends shifted near the counter, pretending not to stare. I grabbed a towel and fanned the faint smoke toward the vent. Heat crawled up my neck while everyone waited for my reaction. "It is fine, just a little crisp," I joked with a tight grin. He jabbed a fork into the chicken and lifted a blackened edge. "Looks like my grocery money went straight into the trash." He let the fork drop with an exaggerated sigh that filled the room. Someone laughed too loud, then went quiet when I did not join. I reached for the carving knife, hands stiffer than they should be. "We can just cut around the worst parts, no big deal." He stepped aside but stayed close enough for everyone to hear. "When you are not the one paying, I guess it is not big." The words slid out light, but each one dug under my skin. Our friend Megan moved to grab plates, trying to smooth the mood. "This still smells amazing, I would mess it up way worse." I caught her glance, quick and worried, and forced a smile back. Behind her, he opened the fridge with a sharp tug and chuckled. Good thin. G, the guy footing the bill, also brought backup takeout. We carried everything to the table, chicken in the center like proof. He placed the takeout box beside it with a little flourish. Just in case our stay-at-home chef has an off night. He dropped into his chair and looked around like waiting for applause. My pulse hammered so hard I almost missed the first toast. He lifted his glass and tilted it toward his buddies. To having everyone over finally in my place again. I flinched at that, my tiny and sharp like an inside joke. He noticed I saw it and his smile widened just a bit. Feels good to host when you know you earned every inch. One of the guys bumped his shoulder and raised his drink too. You two have it made, man, she gets to be home. That line hung there, light for them, heavy for me. He turned to me with that familiar, almost friendly grin. Yeah, she has a sweet gig, he lives in my fully funded world. Laughter circled the table, nervous and loud, and then faded. I cut into the least ruined piece of chicken for our child. Well, someone has to keep this place from falling apart. My voice shook on the last word, so I took a quick sip. He watched me over the rim of his glass, eyes bright and cold. Megan tried again, poking at her plate with her fork. Honestly, staying home is rough, I could never juggle all that. Her boyfriend nodded and pointed at the high chair near my chair. Yeah, that tiny boss alone is a full-time position. For a second I felt seen, then the moment snapped. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands steepled. Sure, she helps, but let us be real for a second. He glanced around like asking permission to keep going, no one stopped him. If I walked away tomorrow, this entire setup disappears, instantly. The room got quiet in that heavy way that makes forks pause. I stared at him, then at the couple across from us. You mean if you left we would have to adjust, I answered. He gave a small laugh that did not reach his eyes. No, I mean everything here exists because I cover it every month. His finger tapped the table with each short phrase like a drum. He started listing things, casual, almost playful for the audience. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, car, streaming services, all on my shoulders. Each item landed like a stone, one after another, relentless. He spread his hands wide, inviting everyone to take it in. Everything you are enjoying right now runs through my paycheck. My fork scraped my plate and made an awful screeching noise. I set it down and rested my hands in my lap. That is kind of a weird flex in front of our guests. My voice came out quieter than I intended, but sharp enough. He shrugged and grinned like I had just fed him another line. Come on, I'm just being honest, he chuckled, eyes on me. She keeps things tidy, I make sure there is even a place. He turned toward our friends and raised his glass again. It is a good arrangement when everyone remembers who funds the lifestyle. That word lifestyle hit like a slap disguised as a compliment. Megan reached for the salad bowl and changed the subject abruptly. So daycare prices are brutal right now, my coworker almost fainted. She looked at me on purpose, giving me a path out. At least you two figured out something that works for your family. Her tone begged him to drop it, but he was not done. He sliced into the chicken and winced dramatically as the knife hit char. Look, I am not ungrateful, she puts in effort here. He slid a scraped piece onto his plate and kept talking. But at the end of the day, this is my investment. He gestured at the walls, the table, even our child in the high chair. This roof exists because I signed for it. He pointed toward the driveway, his ring catching in the overhead light. That car outside, same story, my signature, my payments. Then he lifted his fork and nodded toward the plates again. This meal, even burned, is still mine too because I paid for it. Everyone stared down at their food, suddenly very interested in chewing. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, drowning out the clink of silverware. I swallowed hard and forced my gaze up to meet his. So what exactly do you think I am doing here? My hands clenched under the table, nails digging into my palms. He did not blink, he almost looked pleased I had finally pushed back. You live in something I built, that is the truth. He smiled, slow and careful, while still holding my eyes. You manage within what I provide, that is how this works. Then, almost as an afterthought, he dropped the line that changed everything. I own this whole setup and I let you stay in it. He said it gently, like explaining rules to a child. My vision fuzzed for a second, like someone lowered the volume on life. Megan sucked in a breath, her boyfriend shifted in his chair. No one spoke, the silence slammed harder than any insult. Our toddler started babbling loudly, banging a spoon on the tray. The noise snapped us all back into motion at once. I grabbed the spoon and kissed his hair, anything to stay grounded. Can we not do this performance right now? I muttered, still facing the tray. My voice shook, but I did not care anymore if they heard. He scoffed and leaned back as if I was overreacting again. Relax, I am just being transparent, nothing wrong with facts. He reached for his drink and finished it in a few gulps. If I am carrying the financial risk, I get to acknowledge it. He smiled at our friends, searching their faces for approval or backup. No one gave it to him, not really, not this time. Megan forced a tight laugh that died halfway out. Well, cheers to everybody surviving adulthood, that is enough drama. She tapped her glass against mine with more force than needed. I clung to that sound like proof someone else felt the tension. The evening limped along after that, jokes thinner, smiles strained. We cleaned up together, moving around each other in stiff motions. At the door, he clapped his friend on the shoulder with energy. Next time we will grill outside, less chance of a kitchen disaster. They laughed, but I saw their eyes flick toward me and away. When the door closed, the house felt instantly smaller around us. He gathered empty glasses, steps loud, shoulders set in a stubborn line. You were awfully sensitive tonight, he tossed over his shoulder, voice flat. I was honest about how this place runs, nothing more than that. His back stayed turned, like he had already decided his version was fact. I stacked plates in the sink harder than necessary, water spraying out. If you want to brag, do it without dragging me in. He wiped the counter slowly, movements exaggerated, jaw tight. You enjoy the benefits, but you never want to hear the reality. He tossed the dishcloth aside, missing the edge of the sink completely. Sleep was impossible after that, my brain would not quiet. I lay in the dark, watching the ceiling, counting nothing in particular. His words looped, that line about owning this whole life. It did not feel like a joke anymore, it felt like a warning. A warning I should have heard much earlier than that night. My phone glowed on the dresser, face down, screen buzzing once. I reached for it, careful not to shake the mattress. A notification from a work group chat still sat there unread. I opened our old conversation, thumb hovering over a familiar contact. My old manager's name stared back, like a door I had closed myself. I started typing, erased it, then tried again with shorter lines. Hi, weird question, are there any openings coming up soon? I stared at the words, feeling both reckless and strangely awake. In the darkness, I could hear his slow, steady breathing beside me. My thumb pressed send before I could talk myself out of it. The message left, tiny arrow sliding across the screen, impossible to undo. I locked the phone and slid it under my pillow on instinct. My heart hammered, not from fear of him reading it, not exactly. It was something else, a spark of myself I thought was gone. Lying there, I realized his claim on my life might finally meet resistance. The woman on the phone repeated my information, then gave me silence. You are not listed on this mortgage at all. My hand tightened around the receiver until my fingers ached. Can you double check? I asked, even though I heard her clearly. If my name was missing here, I needed to know how bad it was. She asked for the loan number again, and I read it slower. I heard clicks, a sigh, then a careful professional voice. Borrower is your husband only, there is no co-borrower attached. I stared at the wall and tried to keep my breathing steady. Okay, thanks, I'm just organizing paperwork, I lied through my teeth. When the call ended, the quiet sounded wrong, almost too sharp. I pulled open the drawer where we kept every important envelope. My fingers shook a little while I dug through thick stacks. Insurance, car note, tax letters, his name at the top every time. By the third one, my temples pounded like someone knocking from inside. I finally found the property paperwork, folded and rubber banded together. There it was in black and white, his name alone on the deed. No in spouse, no second line, just him, clean and standalone. I read it twice, hoping I somehow missed myself hiding in there. I did not, and that realization hit harder than any insult. You know that dizzy feeling when your brain tries to rewrite reality. I sat on the floor, papers spread around me like evidence. I had walked through this door for years thinking it was ours. Apparently it was his, and I was something like a long-term guest. For a second, I hated how naive I had been about all this. A thump from upstairs pulled me out of that spiral. Nap time was over, which meant I had to stand up. I stuffed Everett. hing back in the drawer with quick, clumsy hands. My heart still raced while I wiped my face and grabbed a snack. I moved through the house feeling like I was trespassing in my own life. That night, his banking app flashed across his screen while he cooked. A notification popped up, larger than usual, with a huge balance. Not the familiar checking account, another one with a different label. He flipped his phone face down before I could read the name fully. The glimpse was enough to tell me he had a private cushion somewhere. "Everything okay?" I asked, reaching for plates to keep my hands busy. "Yeah, work stuff," he answered, sliding his phone into his pocket quickly. He turned back to the stove, shoulders relaxed again, whistling under his breath. I watched the outline of that phone against his jeans like it glowed. So he had a safety net while I counted grocery dollars to the cent. That hidden balance stuck in my mind through dishes and bath time. By the time he fell asleep on the couch, my brain would not stop. I opened my own laptop at the table and searched quietly. Not for recipes or mom pages this time, for legal consultations near me. Just seeing the word attorney next to my city made my stomach twist. I clicked on one with good reviews and a short bio. The schedule consultation button felt like a red trigger under my cursor. For a second I hovered, thinking of how he would react if he knew. Then I remembered him listing every bill in front of our friends. I entered my information and hit confirm before I could chicken out. The firm called the next morning while our kid watched a cartoon. "We have a half-hour slot this Thursday, does that work?" "Yes," I answered too fast, then cleared my throat and repeated. I wrote down the time, hand cramped like they might take it away. When I hung up, I felt both sick and weirdly steady. On Thursday, I dropped my child with Megan under a vague excuse. "Doctor thing," I told her, avoiding her eyes, voice too light. She squeezed my arm and said to text if I needed anything. I drove to the office, gripping the wheel hard enough to hurt. The whole drive there, I argued with myself about turning around. The attorney greeted me with a firm handshake and a neutral gaze. "Tell me what's going on, start with the money details," he said. I sat on the edge of the chair, knees locked, mouth dry. I quit my job for our kid, now he controls every dollar. Once I started, everything spilled out faster than I planned. I told him about the weekly cash piles in the public comments. About the budget sheet with my name only on variable spending. I described the line about owning this life like it was property. My voice shook a few times and I pretended to cough. He listened without interrupting, just tapping a pen against a pad. "Whose name is on the house?" he asked finally, eyes steady. "His," I answered, the word feeling heavier out loud. "Whose name is on the car?" "His," again, this time quieter. "Any savings, retirement, investments, joint accounts?" he continued. I shook my head, throat tight, wishing I had better answers. "There is a checking account where bills go, but it is his too." I mentioned the other balance I had seen flash across his screen. "I am not listed anywhere as far as I can tell," I admitted. Saying it all at once made the situation feel painfully real. He leaned back and let out a slow, controlled breath. "All right, I am not here to scare you, but you are vulnerable." Hearing a stranger confirm my fear made my chest clench hard. "You need documentation," he continued, voice calm but firm. "Messages, statements, screenshots, anything that shows money control and remarks. So just start collecting proof like I am building a case." The idea of turning my marriage into a file made me nauseous. He nodded once, then slid a blank notepad toward me. "Also, you need your own account, even if it starts tiny." He tapped the corner of the page for emphasis, eyes on mine. "What would I even put in there?" I asked, half whisper. "Any little amount you can carve out without triggering him." He listed ideas in a quiet, practical tone that somehow hurt. "Rounding down cash for groceries, selling unused items, birthday money, freelance work. Do not announce it and do not use the shared address," he added. I scribbled notes with a shaking pen, writing more than he said. "One more thing," he added, leaning forward slightly over the desk. "Write down those ownership comments with dates, as close as you remember." His expression softened for a moment, just enough to break my composure. Quartz-like patterns, not one dramatic story told in hindsight. On the drive home, my mind replayed that last sentence nonstop. Patterns, not moments, which meant I could not shrug anything off anymore. Every time he reminded me whose money it was, it counted now. The thought freaked me out and weirdly kept me upright at on. I realized I had been gaslighting myself more than he ever could. That night after everyone was asleep, I opened a blank note. I titled it with the date and stared at the blinking cursor. Then I started typing out every controlling phrase I could recall. What he said, where we were, who was there, how I reacted. By the third line, my eyes stung and my jaw ached. I emailed the note to a fresh address I had just created. I used a neutral name and set it up with a new password. Not mom-related, not tied to anything he would guess or recognize. It felt sneaky and wrong, like I was cheating on our agreement. At the same time, it felt like the first grown decision I had made in months. The next day, I drove to a local bank while he was at work. My hands trembled slightly as I filled out the application. Individual account, the clerk confirmed, glancing at his screen. Yes, I answered, forcing myself to meet his eyes. He slid a small folder toward me when it was done, very routine. Walking back to the car, I kept touching my bag to be sure. That little packet felt like a secret weapon and a confession. I transferred $20 from my weekly cash before I got home. It looked ridiculous on the screen, a tiny, lonely number. Still, seeing my own name above it did something I cannot fully explain. After that, every controlling remark turned into a timestamp in my head. When he joked about his roof, I noted the day and time. When he rolled his eyes about his paycheck, I wrote it down later. When he reminded me to stay within his budget, that went in too. I stopped letting those comments dissolve into the air like they used to. I started selling a few unused things online, small stuff at first. Kid clothes he had outgrown, a baby item still in good condition. Each pickup meant a little extra folded into my pocket discreetly. At night, I deposited those wrinkled bills at an ATM across town. Watching the numbers creep up was the only thing that calmed me. I know this sounds sneaky, and honestly, part of me hated it. There was this voice in my head calling me disloyal, maybe worse. But there was another voice, quieter, that kept me moving forward. It reminded me that he already had a private cushion and full control. All I was doing now was trying to make sure I did not drown alone. The paper hit the table so hard my water sloshed over. He stood over me with a bank statement clenched in his hand. Care to explain why this transfer keeps popping up every month? His finger stabbed at the line with my secret account number. My heart jumped, but my face stayed weirdly calm for once. I wiped the spill with a napkin, buying 2 extra seconds. It is savings, I answered, voice steady in a way that surprised me. For what? He snapped, leaning closer, breath coming fast and uneven. For me, I said, finally saying the part I had never spoken aloud. The room went quiet enough that I heard the fridge hum behind him. So you skim my money now? He asked, almost laughing from disbelief. He paced a slow line behind the chairs, jaw working like he was chewing rocks. You do not bring in a cent and you still sneak some off. He held the paper up between 2 fingers like something dirty. You understand, every dollar here originated from me, right? I felt something inside me click into place instead of break. There is no me in a marriage budget, or there should not be. He barked out a short, sharp sound that was nowhere near a laugh. Easy for the dependent to say, hard for the provider to swallow. He tossed the statement back down so it slid toward my plate. I straightened it with 2 fingers, more to keep my hands busy. This is not about stealing from you, this is about survival. You live in my house, you eat food I pay for. He pointed toward the ceiling, then toward the doorway and the driveway. You move through my things every day, and now you hoard on the side. My phone buzzed on the counter and we both looked. The preview showed one line from my old manager. Offer letter attached, let me know if the start date works. I felt the world tilt a little and then settle into focus. He reached for the phone, but I got there first. You going to share that? He asked, voice lower now. I opened the email, my thumb hesitant for half a second. It is a job, I answered, eyes on the screen instead of him. Full-time, salary, benefits, start date in 3 weeks. Saying it out loud felt like turning a key in a lock. He laughed once, short and mean, like he had heard a bad joke. You think you can just waltz back into that little office life? He folded his arms, shoulders squared, blocking half the kitchen. Who is paying the childcare while you play at independence? He had no idea how long I had already thought about that. I already asked Megan about watching him 3 days a week. I grabbed a folder from the counter and slid it toward him. Her coos and runs a home daycare for the other 2 days. I tapped the printed estimate at the bottom, my finger firm. It fits once my paychecks start landing in my account. He flipped through the pages, eyes scanning, brow furrowing deeper. So you've been planning this behind my back for how long? The outrage in his voice would have crushed me a month earlier. Now it mostly confirmed that I had not overreacted to anything. I have been planning it since you started calling this your life. He slammed the folder shut and pointed at the door. You are forgetting something big, you do not own this place. He gestured around at the walls like a game show host. Everything here is mine, I built it, I maintain it. He jabbed his chest once with his thumb for emphasis. I know, I answered, and this time it did not sting the same. That is why I signed a lease yesterday somewhere else. His mouth actually fell open and he blinked like his brain glitched. I pulled another set of papers from my bag and laid them out. Small apartment, month to month, walking distance to my new job. You are not taking my kid, he snapped, taking a half step forward. I stood up so we were the same height and did not flinch. No one said anything about taking, we will figure a schedule. The word schedule tasted metallic, but I pushed it out anyway. What I am taking is myself out of this arrangement. He grabbed the bank statement again and shook it in the air. You think a few hidden transfers and some daycare quotes make you ready. His face was flushed now, eyes bright, breathing faster than before. This is my account, my mortgage, my car, my everything. Then he threw the sentence at me that finally broke the spell. I own this, all of this, and you are just a guest here. There it was, said clean, with no jokes and no audience. It did not sound like a slip anymore, it sounded like belief. My hand stopped shaking, which honestly scared me more than shaking would have. I am done being a guest in a life I helped run, I answered. He scoffed and turned away, pacing in a tight circle by the sink. You are overreacting because I track bills, that is all this is. He grabbed his phone and scrolled through something with jerky movements. You want to talk numbers, fine, we can sit down with everything. He started to launch into a speech, but I cut across him. I already sat down with someone about the numbers. He froze, thumb hovering over his screen, shoulders suddenly still. A lawyer, I added, watching his head snap in my direction. Nothing filed yet, just information, just options, just reality. The word lawyer hung between us, heavier than anything else so far. His voice dropped when he answered, quiet but sharp enough to slice. You are threatening me in my own home with my own income. I shook my head once very slowly, feeling incredibly tired. No, I am telling you I am not trapped here like you think. Then I picked up my phone and took a picture of the statement. He watched me snap the photo, eyes narrowing, jaw grinding. What are you going to do, post my finances online for sympathy? I raised the phone again and got the folder in another shot. These are for me, for my file, for my memory when I doubt myself. I realized then I had started documenting to protect my future self, not punish him. Our kids started fussing in the next room, voice rising in confusion. I walked past him toward the hallway, but he caught my wrist. His grip stopped just short of painful, and his eyes searched my face. You really going to burn down everything because you feel unappreciated? I looked at his hand on my skin until he let go. I am leaving because you keep reminding me you own me by extension. My voice came out low and even, almost too calm for the moment. You do not say those words by accident, you say them because you mean them. He dropped his gaze for the first time that entire conversation. And in that tiny pause, I knew nothing would change if I stayed. The actual move happened faster than either of us expected. Megan helped me fill boxes while he was at work one afternoon. Most of it was clothes, baby things, small stuff we could lift quickly. I left the big furniture and anything we could argue about later. It was amazing how little I really needed once I started packing. When he came home to the half-empty house, I was waiting. Our child was already buckled into his car seat, chewing on a toy. My suitcase stood by the door, zipped, scuffed, more honest than anything else here. He stopped just inside the entryway, eyes taking in the changes. You are really going through with this? He asked, voice flat and thin. Yeah, I answered, fingers wrapped tight around the handle of my bag. I have a start date, a childcare plan, a roof I actually signed for. I met his eyes and held them, even when mine started to sting. You reminded me every day this was your. As so I listened. I reached for the doorknob, pulse racing but steps steady. You walk out now, do not expect my help when it falls apart. His words chased me down the porch, sharp and loud and bitter. I paused by the car and looked back one last time. You have made it very clear whose help it has always been, I replied. Then I slid into the driver's seat and pulled away from his driveway. The apartment was small and echoey and absolutely perfect for right now. I laid our kid on a blanket and watched him roll and babble. Then I opened my laptop on the floor and pulled up my notes. Screenshots of statements, photos of cash piles, quotes from our fights. All the pieces of a story I finally refused to live quietly. Now I am here typing this out with boxes still unpacked. My first paycheck hits my own account next week if nothing implodes. There is no safety net except the one I started behind his back. I keep replaying his line about owning everything while I stack evidence. So tell me, internet strangers, did I blow up a marriage or finally get out of a cage?